See that I am a real person. I am a real person, but I am going to take my camera off as well because it's not about me. It's about the presentation and helping you guys to do well on your social studies praxis. So I am going to turn my camera off and hopefully you guys can still hear me. I am going to share my screen and hopefully, I don't think I have, it says host disabled participant screen sharing, Dr. Tillis.
Oh no, okay. So let me see.
Okay, we're patient, we're teachers.
Thank you for being patient. Okay, let me see, cancel, that's not what I want to do. Let me see,
We're
advance.
teachers.
Portion of screen, content from camera.
I hope everybody's had a great day.
Do you,
I'm sorry,
does anyone on this Zoom chat know how I could grant Dr. Wilson sharing privileges? Because typically I don't have this issue.
I thought you go to where I am as a participant, or you know what, maybe not.
Host.
And
maybe I could make you host.
Yeah, make me host, or either in the where is it where you set up the actual link. Can
you try it now? I think you should be able to do it.
The bottom of my screen says share screen and then invite.
I see multiple participants can share. So you changed it.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate your patience.
We all need our colleagues. We all need our colleagues.
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes, it does. I believe in that. Okay, you guys should be able to see my screen. Slideshow. Let's go ahead and get started from the beginning. All right, awesome. I should have cleaned out all my tabs, but sorry, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. I can.
All right, awesome. So we're getting started a couple of minutes late. I do apologize for that, but sometimes that happens in the real world. Make sure you are at the workshop that you chose to be at. This is the workshop where I will be going over some helpful hints for the social studies test. And here's our agenda for this evening. I'm going to review how the test is divided. I'm going to talk about what to consider prior to taking the test. And most importantly, I'm going to review some content under each division of the test, and we'll leave a few minutes for questions and answers at the end. However, if you have questions, am I admitting? I'm sorry, or are you going to take care of that, Dr. Tillis?
I'll admit, thank you.
Okay, no problem. So if you have questions during the presentation, I do not mind if you put them in the chat or you raise your hand. Since I've taken my camera off, I'm not able to see that, but Dr. Tillis has been so gracious to say that she will man the chat room and also man people raising their hands to ask a question. So just do that throughout. Feel free. This is very informal, so feel free to do that. So this is how the social studies subtest 5004 is set up. It's divided into 3 sections or 3 divisions. And as you can see, the United States history, government, and citizenship makes up the majority of the test with 27 questions, and it's 45%, approximately 45% of the test. The other 2 divisions are geography, anthropology, and sociology, and world history and economics. And those 2 are roughly about the same number of questions. 18 and 15 is the approximate number. So you have about 60 questions on this test, and you are allowed 60 minutes. So in theory, you would think, and we would tell our students, oh, maybe spend about a minute per question. However, some of these questions you're going to be able to answer in less than a minute. And so you'll be able to spend more time on other questions. So here's a disclaimer. These are some points that I wanted to bring out to you. I have successfully passed many Praxis tests, including the one this workshop is preparing you all to take. And here's some advice from me. For you to pass the test or any other test, it's very important, and this is just an opinion of mine, that your mind be calm. And I know oftentimes when we are going to take the test, we may have been doing several things throughout the day, but if you could just take out some time to make sure you've eaten and make sure that you have a few calm moments, I say at least 2 hours, but it just depends on your day that you're taking the test. But just try to be in the right frame of mind where you're calm and you're allowing your mind to be able to recall the information that you've studied. And of course, be confident in what you know. Try not to second guess yourself. A lot of times that happens and we don't score as well as we possibly could because we're wavering back and forth on, oh, should I choose B or should I choose C? Try not to do that. Try to believe in yourself that if your first inclination is to choose B, then choose B. If you have time left at the end after you finish the test and you want to go back to a couple of questions just to make sure they are the answers that you wanted to submit, then go ahead and do it then. But try not to waver on any particular question. And here's another point that I think is really, really important to say. The Praxis test, and I should have said more than one test, but this particular Praxis test is the one we're talking about. It's not designed to trick you. And I think it's really good for you to know that. The questions are very straightforward. They don't tend to be leading, Read the questions, think about what it's asking you, and then just select the correct answer to that question. Try your hardest not to add more information than what they're asking you to answer. And sometimes that can be difficult, but try to just answer the question that's set before you. Pace yourself. Like I said earlier, there are 60 questions, and we do usually tell our students, try to gauge maybe a minute or so per question, but as I've stated earlier, just move about the test as you will. When you start to take the test, you'll notice that there are some questions that you can answer a lot faster. So go ahead, my opinion would be, and suggestion would be, go ahead and answer those that you know the answer to, and then those that you might need to ponder a little bit, go back and do those after you've answered the ones that you surely know are the correct answers. You may choose to answer your constructive response questions first. Unfortunately, the Praxis study guide doesn't tell us, or nor does the ETS Praxis website that I could find, it doesn't tell you exactly how many constructive response questions you might have. You may not have any, and then again, you may have one or two. I can't imagine you having more than that. When I took the test, I believe I had three, I want to say that I had 3 constructive response questions. Try to believe in yourself. And that kind of goes along with what I said earlier about being confident. Do not leave any questions unanswered. You have a great opportunity to choose the correct answer. So choose an answer to all the questions. Do not leave any answers blank. Does anyone have any questions so far? All right. This is directly from ETS, the test makers of the Praxis test, how to approach unfamiliar formats. I'm not going to read all of this to you. It basically just says that there are new ways that they are assessing our knowledge on this test. It's not always just straightforward selected response questions. There may be an audio, there might be a video, might be animation, might be a map. Then again, you may have to read a passage. There are some interactive questions. You're going to be given information at the beginning of the test to tell you how to manipulate the device that you're using to try to answer the questions in your best way. It's going to tell you what you need to do for returning to a question that you had earlier. It's going to show you what you need to press if you want to highlight something or underline something. Try your best not to make the questions more difficult than they are. Again, don't read for hidden meanings or think that they are trying to trick you. That is one thing I have found. I've taken many, many Praxis tests, and they are very straightforward questions. I'll give you all a minute or so to look over this slide. This also is from ETS, the test makers for the Praxis test. It's about understanding constructed response questions. All right. Keep these things in mind. Let's see if I can move. I don't think I can move that at the top of my screen. I thought it was going to go away. Answer the questions accurately. Try to answer the questions completely. Answer the question that is asked. Try your best not to give additional information unless you're answering a constructed response question. On the constructed response questions, it's just really important to answer the question that they give you, give details, give a thorough response to the question, but try to make sure that everything that you say is linked to the actual question that they ask you. You will receive no credit or low score if you answer another question, or if you state, oh, this question doesn't have an answer, they're trying to trick me. That's not the case. Answer all the questions. I'll give you another minute or so to finish looking over this information. I recommend this evening that you take some notes, as well as answering the questions that I'm going to review with you. I think we have maybe a little over 12 questions. Because we had a limited amount of time this evening, I think I only selected about 12, maybe 14 questions. So if you can get a sheet of paper, if you don't already have one handy, and answer the questions as we go along, because what I'll do is go over the answers after you've had a moment to answer the question yourself. And please try to consider what I cover as strictly foundational, for your understanding. I don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence. Please know that. I hope that you'll take what you learn in this workshop and think about what you already know, and use that information, all your schema, use that information to answer the questions that you're presented with. I have been a mentor teacher for many years, and oftentimes teachers would tell me, oh, I didn't pass the Praxis, but I think I knew the answer. I just wasn't sure if that was the right answer, and I didn't end up passing, so I have to take it again. Well, what I would say, and what I've told them, is try not to be anxious about the test. And I know test anxiety is real, but really try your best to believe that you know what you know, and know that they're not trying to trick you. Read the question, and if you're compelled to choose a particular answer, feel confident in that answer. And you just may be surprised at how many questions that you end up getting correct. And hopefully a passing score. That's what we're all rooting for, a passing score. So let's get started. The largest section of the test is going to have questions on the United States history, government, and citizenship. So we're going to spend a little more of our time this evening on this particular division of the test. Historians generally recognize three motives for European exploration and colonization in the New World, which the current United States was considered part of the New World. And to sum all that up, their motives were for gold, God, and glory. And that's just 3 G's to try to make it simple. God, in that they wanted religious freedom. Gold, because they were looking for economic opportunities, economic welfare. They wanted to go after making more money, being more secure in the financial realm, economy. And glory, because these European countries really wanted power. They wanted to be able to say, oh, we have this much more land, or we got there first. They were definitely out of that power and recognition. There's some general causes of the American Revolution. And what I tried to do my best in preparing this presentation was to, seeing that I've taught this information, I wanted to pull out for you guys really relevant information that was most important when you review what has happened in the United States history, in our government, and in our citizenship, in the amount of time that we have to be together this evening. So here's some general causes of the American Revolution. The American Revolution, most people in the United States realize, was in 1776. It's sometimes called the War of Independence. On the test, I'm not exactly sure what it'll be called, but it'll have a reference to 1776, whether it's American Revolution or the War of Independence. The colonists were greatly influenced by this philosopher, John Locke, which came from Europe, and of course the Enlightenment period. That's something to keep in mind. Look at that second and that third bullet point. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time reading aloud, but I will give you time to read those points. I see that there's something in the chat. Dr. Tillis, is that a question I need to address right now?
I don't see anything in the chat other than my comment saying
Oh,
that is
okay.
great advice. Yeah. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, you're doing fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's probably just your advice then. I didn't click on it.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right, there are several different groups of Europeans that came to the Americas, North and South America, and our Central America as well, during what's called the Age of Exploration. I feel very strongly you really need to know these larger groups of Europeans that came over to explore in the New World. I hope you're able to see this graphic well. The Dutch, the French, the Spanish, and of course the English. I know when I took the test, there were quite a few maps. So if you don't feel that you are a strong map reader, that may be something you want to concentrate on prior to taking the test. And the way you would concentrate on that is to go to Google, for example, or whatever search engine you use, you frequent, but I would say Google, and just type in American history, and you'll see a wide variety of websites. There's so many out there. You could put in history of the United States, history of the United States government. You could put in history of the citizenship of the United States. There's so many websites. I just chose not to list those on a page because I know you guys are all smart and you could do that on your own. And when you click on those different websites, more than likely you're going to see tons of maps. So brush up on your map skills, but I would say in a nutshell, every map that you see on that test is going to have a map key, and they're really not that difficult. If you look at the map key, it's usually by some type of denotion of either color or dots or stripes or something of that nature, diagonal lines, and you'll get a lot of information from that map key to help you read the map. Here's our first question, and I think we have maybe 6 or 7 or so under this particular division, United States history, government, and citizenship. So here's our first question. And since you're doing this on your own, you can just write an A, B, C, or D down for the first question. We'll go over the answer after each question, so you don't have to number them necessarily. The Colombian Exchange best refers to which one of these answers? A, B, C, or D? When you're looking for an answer and you don't know the answer right off the top of your head, you go to the actual question. As a test creator or test maker myself, I know that oftentimes in the questions of the test, there are clues or the actual answer could be found in the question. So the Colombian Exchange best refers to, when we see that word Colombian, most of us in America think of Columbus, and you would be right to do so. So you look at your choices and you see which ones actually have some reference to Columbus. We see A and C have a reference to Columbus. I'm not going to break down every question like this, but if I feel the need to break it down, please don't be insulted. I just want to make sure that everybody has the same test taking strategies in mind when you sit to take the social studies test. So that means we could eliminate B and D. So between A and C, which 2 do you think would be the correct answer? If anybody wants to come off of mute and tell me what you think the answer is, that is fine with me. We can make this interactive if you would like. Would anyone like to take a guess, or you know the correct answer?
I chose A.
Okay, all right. Would you like to elaborate why you chose A, or if not, that's fine.
Well, I used Columbus as a hint.
Okay, all right. Let's see if you and the others that chose A are correct. You indeed were. The Colombian Exchange refers to the trade routes established between Europe and the land Columbus found, and it's called the Colombian Exchange because Columbus pioneered the actual trading. So good job, good job, good job. Here's the next question. Which of the following best describes the primary goal of the first French explorers of North America? In this question, you want to make sure you hone in to those important words. As teachers, we're always telling our students to do this. So now we need to take that same advice for ourselves as we take tests. Which of the following best describes? So I'm looking for a description. Which one of these best describes what would be the primary goal? So that means many of these might be a goal, or they all might be a goal, but which one would be primary? Which one would be most important? Or maybe one that they would do before, they'd want to reach before another, since it's the primary goal. And then the first is just coincidental, information, just extra information. We don't care if it's the first explorers or the second explorers, but it's the first French explorers to North America. So take a guess or either give me the correct answer. Anybody want to shout out an answer? Probably not D, right? Because we're talking about French explorers. So establish a military outpost to combat Spanish dominance of North America? Probably not so much, right? The correct answer was C, discover a Western sea route to trade with North America. And this was a really long explanation to C being the correct answer. But it was to discover a Western sea route to trade with Asia. Remember, we're talking about the gold, the glory, or God in the reason why these explorers came to North America. So if it's something related to one of those three areas, we're closer to choosing the correct answer. So when we think about the history of the United States, we can't help but think about the 13 original colonies. That's where it all began, these 13 original colonies. Sometimes the northern colonies are referred to as the New England colonies. So on your test, they may say New England, they may say northern. Then the colonies that were literally in the middle were considered middle, and then southern. There were colonists that lived in Maine, present-day Maine. If you look at this map, the very most north eastern, coast of this particular map, it shows that it's pink and it's a New England colony. It says part of Massachusetts because Maine was not one of the 13 colonies. A lot of times people think that Maine was because people did live in Maine at that time. It wasn't called Maine. It was part of the Massachusetts colony. So make sure you don't include Maine when you're thinking about the northern colonies. They're Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. If you don't have these memorized, I greatly suggest that you memorize these. The middle colonies, New Jersey, New York, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, and the southern colonies. We don't often think of Maryland as being a southern colony because we don't consider it a southern state these days, but it was considered a southern colony when we just had 13 at the time. If I'm going too quickly, please stop me. I get excited about talking about history. Can I move on? I'm going to say silence is agreement, yes. All right, as each world power developed its colonies, a global system of trade emerged, and it emerged between the Americas, Europe, and Africa. Many of you might already be familiar with the triangular trade. This is something else we can't help but consider knowing when we're trying to learn about the history of the United States, our government, our citizenship. We need to know about causes and effects of what great things happened in the world at that time when we were trying to establish our colonization over here in the New World. So this is important information for you to know. Most importantly, look at where those 13 colonies are and what's actually coming in and what's leaving those 13 colonies. That's what you need to focus on for this social studies subtest. As you see, fish, whale oil, lumber, tobacco mostly came from our northern colonies, and it was going back to Europe, back to England mostly, but other countries over there as well, Spain as well. And then your flour, fish, meat, and lumber, which came from the middle colonies primarily, was going to the West Indies. And that's where the slaves first arrived, according to most historians, was to the West Indies. That's something to also keep in mind with the triangular trade. The slave trade was part of the triangular trade.
Dr. Wilson.
Yes.
I was just looking at that map and I can't help but to think about how I guess the importance of sugar. And I don't see it on here because I always often hear about, like, you know, how tea, how people needed the sugar for their tea in Europe, right? And also the type of enslavement that Africans endured in the West Indies on these sugar cane plantations. So
yes, but sugar, you raise a good point. But unfortunately, for I guess this particular time in history with this particular map that I pulled up, it doesn't highlight sugar, but we do know that you're absolutely right. There were many sugar cane fields, I guess we would say, in the West Indies that the slaves originally came. Yeah, they did originally come to man those fields. However, with this being a test of mostly the United States history, I don't think that there may be questions on there, don't quote me, that do relate to slaves and their participation in the harvesting of sugar, but that wasn't done in the 13 colonies so much so as the West Indies. So I don't know if there'll be very many questions related to that.
That's right.
If that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
If that makes sense. But you raise a good point. You raise a good point that we do need to know that. Of course, I'll go ahead and add to that, though, the Southern colonies later did become heavily infiltrated with slaves. And that was for the purpose of plowing those crops and hand picking the crops in those southern, which will turn into states, those southern colonies. So yes, very much slave labor was very much used throughout all the colonies actually, but a concentration of slaves was used in the southern colonies more than the other colonies. Thank you so much. So our first constitution as a country was called the Articles of Confederation. I know all of us have heard of the Articles of Confederation, but it may have been many, many years ago. So I wanted to take a few moments to just kind of review in this one slide what that first constitution looked like. Remember, it's a newly formed country, the country of the United States, and we're trying to figure out what type of government we're going to have, what type of rules we're going to have for our citizens to actually have to abide by. Now, remember, we being the United States, just became clear and free from a king's control, King George's control from England. So we were a little cautious about the national or federal government having a lot of power. Make sure you keep that in mind when you're answering the questions on the test. There were Federalists and there were anti-Federalists. And as you can imagine from that name, the Federalists were thinking, okay, it's okay for us to have a strong national or federal government. They're not the king, they're our people, they're us, they're for our good. And then there were anti-Federalists who thought, no, we don't need anybody in the federal or national position that's going to be having more reign or rule over us, because that's too close to what we had under the king. Are there any questions? All right. This Articles of Confederation was deemed to be too weak. And so there was another meeting called the Constitutional Convention, and there were delegates from most of the colonies. I think there was one colony that didn't send anyone to the Constitutional Convention, but most of the colonies sent a representative from their colony. Of course, their colonies are now states because we've won the war, the American Revolutionary War. And so everybody wanted to send a representative, because one of the biggest complaints we had as colonists over here was that we did not have any representation with the king. And so when we had our new formed country, we wanted to make sure that the people's voice was always being heard. And so we sent representatives from the states. Like I said, I think there was one state who did not send a representative, but eventually all the states were represented. And of course, there was a vote taken on whether we were going to keep the Articles of Confederation or whether we were going to change them. And the vote ended up being that there were too many weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation. Yes, we need a new government for our country, and the Constitution was approved. Now, there were some states who said, now, wait a minute, this is not something that our state can sign off on, because it looks like the federal government or the national government has too much power in this Constitution. Even though they had haggled about how the people's voice was going to be heard in what ended up being our legislative branch with the House of Representatives and the senators. And, we have 2 senators from every state. And that was to settle with those states who were small and said, oh, we want equal representation in the legislative branch when laws are made. So it was agreed upon that, okay, we'll have 2 senators from every state. And that's how it is today. And then the larger states said, well, wait a minute, we've got more people in our states. We want representation. So there was an agreement that, okay, in the House of Representatives, it's going to be based on your population. And you may have heard of the 3/5 rule. So slaves weren't counted as whole people. To the advantage of that state, they could count each slave, their slave population, I'm sorry, not each state, each slave, but their slave population as 3/5 of a vote. So we're not going to get into those details because we just don't have time to go through all of that. But we know that we have senators, 2 from every state, and we know that our House of Representatives are based on our population in our states. So the Constitution included 10 additional amendments. The first 10 amendments, we have more than that now. We have, I believe, 22 amendments now. But our first set of 10 amendments to our Constitution are called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights. And we know the right to bear arms, the Second Amendment, is definitely one that's in our news here lately. So you can go back and refresh your memory of all 10 of those amendments. You may have 1 or 2 on the test. I don't anticipate you guys having a lot of questions on the Bill of Rights or even on the Constitution on this test. There's just so much information that they can't put too many questions about any one particular subject because there's just so much that could be covered. But you do need to be aware that the first 10 amendments to the Constitution were called the Bill of Rights, and that all the states did participate in accepting our new US Constitution. Here's our next question. What motivated the creation of the Bill of Rights, which I kind of already told you, but choose the correct answer here. Is it A, B, C, or D? What motivated the creation of the Bill of Rights? What was their motivation for actually having the Bill of Rights? And you'll notice these questions are not so much to mimic the actual questions you might have on your social studies test as they are to help you actually stir your memory or prompt you to know about information that could very well be on the social studies subtest. So let's see what the answer is to this question. It is A, fear of a strong central government. It was the anti-federalist fear of a strong central government that led them to the creation of the Bill of Rights. They wanted to make sure that the people's voices were heard. And if you look at the Bill of Rights, you notice that they all are talking about what is going to be individual rights of the citizens in the states. All right, our next question. According to the Constitution, which of the following does not describe a purpose of the United States government? Unfortunately, test makers, including myself, we love putting in questions where we have the not word. So that means that when you look at your answer choices, 3 of these 4 are going to be positive answers to the question. And the one left over that's not a positive response to the question or is not fulfilling the question is going to be your answer. So you're looking to mark the 1 not. So 3 are and 1 is not. According to the Constitution, which of the following you could say does describe a purpose of the United States government? That's going to be 3 answers. Which ones 3 describe a purpose? The one that's left out is your not answer. That answer was A. Establishing democratic governments abroad. We didn't care about those people overseas. We just got free from the King of England. So our government's purposes were based on these B, C, and D, and others, but at least B, C, and D, but definitely not A. Now, we are still an advocate for democracy across the world, but that is not something that was considered a purpose of our government. All right, let's look at this next question. Which of the following was a power granted to the federal government by the Constitution, but it was not provided by the Articles of Confederation? Remember, we said the Articles of Confederation was a weak form of government. So one of these 4 was not provided by the Articles of the Confederation. Which one of these was? 3 was. Which one was granted to the federal government? It wasn't before, but now it is. Was it the power to create treaties, the power to collect taxes, the power to admit new states, or the power to declare war? All right, let's see if you chose the correct answer. It was B. That was the correct answer. The power to collect taxes. I don't know if you all can see that. I thought I could get rid of this little thing up here, but I guess I can't. I thought it was going to go away. Dr. Tillers, do you know how I can get rid of it?
I'm thinking if you click on your PowerPoint, it might go away. Is that?
It's still there.
I don't see anything beyond your PowerPoint on my end.
Oh, so you don't see the bar? Okay.
No.
I've got a bar that's obstructing the top part of my PowerPoint. Okay. All right. I thought it was going to go away. When I practiced, I don't remember it being there. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Which of the following was an important social development made possible by the first industrial revolution? Now think about it. Important social development. When we think about the Industrial Revolution, we know we are moving away from an agrarian society, and we are introducing machinery, industry, and that was introduced in the Northeast. So we have factories now. We have time clocks. We have punching in and punching out. We have boarding homes where women and men that used to be on the farms are now working in a factory. We have children now working in these factories. Everyone's trying to make some money, faster than they would have working on the farms. Because in the agrarian society, you had to wait, on planting and then harvest and then selling your goods at the market. But with the factory, you made money hourly or daily. Faster money was made. So people in America were rushing to try to work at these industries. So which of the following was an important social development? And you may have to make an educated guess, and that's okay. The correct answer was D. D was the correct answer, the rise of the middle class. So before the Industrial Revolution, believe it or not, we had a really small percentage of Americans that were considered in the middle class. But because of the Industrial Revolution, the middle class grew. Which of the following is not associated with the progressive movement? So that means 3 of these were part of the progressive movement. 1 was not. So you could look at this question to figure out which 3 were a part of the progressive movement, and the one that you left out is your answer to this question because it's the not. Or you could just immediately choose which one is not with the progressive movement or a part of the progressive movement. What do you think? We see A has the word movement in it. Does that matter? The correct answer was B, the abolition of slavery, the ending of slavery. So the progressive movement began in the late 1800s, and that was decades after the abolition of slavery, which is questionable today. Some people would question that it did not end slavery, but that's for a different presentation. Which of the following describes a lasting impact of the inventions of Nikola Tesla? I'm seeing a lot of Teslas on the road these days in Memphis. Which of the following describes a lasting impact? Not something that was short-lived, a lasting impact of the inventions of Nikola Tesla. Now, you may or may not be familiar with Nikola Tesla. Use what you know and choose the correct answer, A, B, C, or D. Now, right off the bat, we probably could eliminate D, right? The telephone allowed for long distance. Really, we know Tesla has nothing to do with the telephone, right? We know that. And we could eliminate C. Mass production made automobiles more broadly affordable. Well, I think Ford did that back in the day. So then I may vacillate between A and B. I may not know really for sure what Tesla did. Then again, I might have chosen the correct answer, which was A. Alternating current, AC, was used to create electric grids. And we mostly know that Tesla has electric cars on the road. One of the first producers of electric cars. Everybody got that one correct, right? Next question. The California Gold Rush resulted in all of the following except, almost like a not question, except they use the word except in this question. The California Gold Rush resulted in all but one of these. So 3 of these we know were present in the California Gold Rush. 3 of these were present. Let's choose the correct answer. All right. The correct answer was B. The American economy experiencing rapid inflation due to the influx of gold. So the amount of gold overall was not enough in itself to cause a major change in the national economy. People back then thought they were going to get rich. They truly believed it. They got in their covered wagons and they told Ma and Pa bye We're leaving, we're taking our kids across this country. We don't know what we're going to encounter, but we're going to be rich. When we make it to California, we're going to be rich. And that was not the case for the majority of the people that traveled across this great country. They got to California, and you know the people that got rich? It wasn't the panhandlers. Anybody have a guess? Who were the people that got rich during the California gold rush? Anybody know? Want to take a...
Those in charge, the politicians?
Not so much. Like the people who own the land, I guess I could stretch your answer to include them. They did gain more money than the panhandlers and the people who were coming looking for the gold. The people who struck rich were the people who were selling the equipment and the materials needed to look for the gold. Those were the people that got rich. Those people that were selling those sifters, you know, those pans that allowed the panhandlers to sift for the gold. Those are the people that got rich. The people who owned the actual inns that people were staying in, the actual dormitories that were being built that people rented out days or weeks at a time, those people got rich, not the people who actually traveled to find gold. So keep that in mind. Do we have another question in the chat?
No, that's just me commenting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's all for the United States history, government, and citizenship. And it could have been the whole hour and a half spent on that section. There's so much to know, but I hope I covered enough to jog your memory and to pique your interest on some of those topics that maybe you were unfamiliar with. Let's go to the next division, geography, anthropology, and sociology. It's going to make up about 30% of the test. And here's our first question. Which of the following describes a way that ancient Egyptians adapted the environment to support their civilization? Interesting. Now, if you plan to teach, let me see, what grade? There's a lot of concentration on world history in, I'm probably going to get it wrong. I'm not going to guess. But you need to know the major contributions of the classical civilizations. And of course, the Egyptians are part of the classical civilization. So is Greek and Romans. So are the Greeks and the Romans from Greece and Rome. So which of the following describes a way that ancient Egyptians, that's the key here, a way that ancient Egyptians adapted the environment. When you adapt the environment, you're changing the environment to suit you. You're creating something that's going to help you from the environment to support their civilization. That's going to encourage more people to want to live where they are and live well. The correct answer was A. Ancient Egyptians actually built canals to facilitate irrigation. And there are other people who lived near rivers that also built canals, but in this question, it was the ancient Egyptians that built the canals to facilitate irrigation and of course support their agriculture. All right, next question. Which of the following was not a cause of urbanization in the US in the 1800s? Let's think about it, the 1800s. Now we just won our American Revolution, won our freedom in 1776. So which of the following was not a cause of urbanization in the US in the 1800s? That means 3 were and 1 was not a cause of urbanization. Our answer, D. D was the correct answer. This was not a particular driver of migration in the 1800s. Drought was more significant in the 1930s during the Dust Bowl. Yeah, very hard times. All right. Which of the following, let's see, did I do that? Yeah. Which of the following is the most common reason for forests to be cut down in developing countries? Think about it. What do you think would be the most common reason for forests to be cut down? And we're talking about developing countries, countries that are forming. They're wanting to be better than they are. They're wanting to grow. They're wanting to get larger. They want to do more for their people. What would be a common reason for the forest to be cut down? The correct answer, hopefully somebody chose this answer as well. D is the correct answer. Developing countries generally have an agrarian economy, an economy based upon agricultural production. Everybody's concerned about eating, having food, ample enough food for their people. So that's the most common reason why forests are being cut down. All right, next question. The spread of Buddhism from India to China is an example of which one of these? Think about it. The spread of Buddhism from India to China is an example of what? It could have been from India to any other country. It's an example of what? When you spread something, is it, oh, almost gave the answer away. Let's see what the correct answer is. See if you chose it. The correct answer was A, diffusion. How many of you all got that one correct? I hope everyone did. Diffusion. All right, let's look at the next question. A teacher is explaining to her class how advancements in aviation led to increased imports of goods from other countries. This example best demonstrates the impact of human innovation on what? How advancements in aviation led to increased imports of goods from other countries. And we know aviation, we're talking about flight. We're talking about planes, flying. This example best demonstrates the impact of human innovation on what? Let's see if you all chose the correct answer. I bet you did. The economy. Maybe some of you chose travel. I don't know. Only you know. But the economy was the correct answer. This example best demonstrates the impact of human innovation. Yeah, because goods become available at a cheaper price. You have to really think about this one. An area with which of the following features is likely to have a high population density? An area with which of the following features? Where, when you think about features, you're thinking about what's available there in that area, to loosely define that. So an area with which of these features, A, B, C, or D, is likely to have more people in a smaller area of space, a high population density. A lot of people wanting to live in that area. Would it be where there's disconnected transportation networks, where there's extreme climatic changes? It snows one day, then the next day it's sunny. Would it be rugged terrain where the ground is really hard and there's a lot of rocks and gravel and boulders, not a lot of places where you could plant food? Or would it be D, abundant natural resources? I bet you chose the correct answer. Yep, you did. It's D. People are likely to settle in an area with abundant and easily accessible resources. A lot of people are not going to want to live where there's disconnected transportation, where there are extreme climatic changes. And that's happening more and more these days because of, some people think because of global warming. We're not going to get into that. So a huge area again, geography, anthropology, and sociology. Oh my gosh, it's so much that could be covered. I hope that those questions just prompted you to think about some areas that you really need to focus on your own when it comes to geography and the different cultures, and also how the environment changes our choices as humans. Let's look at world history and economics. This will have the least number of questions, but not far behind the geography, anthropology, and sociology division of the test. Our first question: which of the following is the most important result of Pharaoh Menisys' unification of Upper and Lower Egypt? I know somebody's probably thinking, oh, she's speaking Chinese. I didn't even understand the question. That may happen to you taking the test. Don't freak out. If you don't understand the question, you might have to make an educated guess. And is that okay? It most definitely is, because you do not want to leave any question unanswered. Let me give you a moment to make either an educated guess of the correct answer or choose the correct answer. All right, the correct answer was A. Greater focus on cultivation of culture and the creation of monuments rather than civil war. The greatest political movement in Egypt was the unification of both the Upper and Lower Egypt. And that was due to the efforts of this particular pharaoh. The unification solidified the empire of Egypt, allowing it to focus on the cultivation of culture and the creation of monuments, rather than having a civil war. And we know Egypt did very well at this point in history. Fascinating, fascinating country. Next question. The Cold War era was marked by all of the following except. So 3 of these choices definitely represented the Cold War era. President Reagan was the president in the United States during what was called the Cold War era, if that helps you all at all in trying to choose the correct answer. The Cold War era was marked by 3 of these, 1 it was not, and that's your answer. Let's see if you chose the correct answer. Anybody want to share? What did you choose? No brave soul wants to unmute and share what they chose? Let's see what the correct answer was. Did you choose this answer? C, the use of nuclear weapons in small wars. While both countries threatened the use of nuclear weapons, they were not used in the Cold War. Thankfully, nuclear weapons were not used. Let's go to our next question. How did the Silk Road impact warfare during the early Middle Ages? When most people hear Silk Road, they think about China. See if you can choose the correct answer, or you may already know the correct answer. How did the Silk Road impact warfare during the early Middle Ages? See where, if we're going to choose the correct answer. All right, the correct answer. I'll give you guys another moment. We know the Silk Road was an ancient trade route, and it linked the Western world and the Middle East and Asia. It was a major conduit for trade between China and the Roman Empire. So that may help you choose a correct answer. Correct answer was B, gunpowder. Gunpowder was traded along the route to Western civilizations. And we know in America, we used gunpowder quite a bit when it was time for us, that and dynamite, when it was time for us to work on our railroads. Any questions, comments about that one? All right. The ideology of fascism is defined by all of the following characteristics except, so it's defined by 3 of these, but not one. So the one that it's not is going to be the answer to this question. I hope that these type of questions don't trip you guys up. The ideology of fascism is defined by all of the following characteristics. So there's 3 characteristics that do define the ideology of fascism, but one does not. Now, fascism is a far right, it's authoritarian ideology. Considered a movement, it still is, characterized usually by a dictatorial leader, an autocrat. So maybe that will help you guys in choosing the correct answer. All right, let's go see what the answer is. C, freedom in civil society. So fascist governments restrict civil society as a means of hampering opposition. As I was saying, they are usually authoritarians. All right, let's see. Some test taking tip and reminders. That's all the questions that I had. here's some tips and reminders. I'll give you a moment to read through these. Very important to not skip the hard questions for very long. If you want to, like I said, answer the questions that you know the answer to, you can go through all the questions, all 60 of them, and if you get to one that seems like, oh, I need a little more time to think about this answer, go to another question. You may find that as you go through the questions, you find answers to other questions. That's not unusual. As you go through the questions, you find answers to other questions, and definitely answers that may help you on a constructed response question. So be cognizant of what you're reading in one question that could help you with another question. Hopefully you'll have time once you've gone through all your 60 questions to go back and check over your answers to make sure that you do have the answers that you wanted to have recorded as the correct answer. All right. And thank you for this great opportunity. I hope that it does help you guys. This is some information about me. It was a great opportunity to talk to you all this evening. If you have questions, we do have 15 minutes left to this Zoom session. This is my phone number. You can feel free to call me. This is my email address. I do work for the University of Tennessee at Martin, but I did receive my master's degree from the University of Memphis, I'm proud to say. My son is a senior at the University of Memphis, so I am a University of Memphis alumni and excited and proud to say so.